And welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Kim Davis. Welcome. Today is September 28th. It is the last Tuesday of September. This time next week, it'll be October. That means postseason for baseball. That means it's the final week of the very long regular season of Major League Baseball. The Houston Astros will open a homestand tonight against the Tampa Bay Rays at Minute Maid Park. The first pitch is at 7:10. So man, it's the special time of year, right? It's one of my favorite times of year. You've got baseball winding down the regular season, getting ready for postseason. You have football it's in full swing. It's underway, right? The Houston Texans have played 3 games. They're 1-2. They play again this Sunday. They go to Buffalo. We'll talk a little bit about the Texans coming up in a little bit later. And of course, basketball is ready to start, right? The NBA season, training camps are opening. The Rockets held their media day yesterday. I'm going to let you hear from some Rockets, and I want to talk about something in particular before we talk a lot about what this Rockets team will be in basketball. The Rockets will open training camp today. They actually are opening it right now as we speak. And as soon as I get done with this live show, I'm going to go to camp in Galveston and check out the first day of training camp. So just a lot happening in the world of sports. And as I mentioned, of course, the Houston Texans are preparing for their next game. They played last Thursday night at home against Carolina. The team's a little banged up. If you will remember, the starting quarterback Tyrod Taylor went out in the second game at Cleveland with a hamstring injury and was put on IR, which means he's out at least 4 weeks. And so we'll see. I saw him walking around the building yesterday, but I have no idea how he's doing. We'll see how he progresses and how soon he will return. So for now, Davis Mills, the rookie third-round draft pick out of Stanford, is the starter for this team, and he will start again this weekend. So let's start with the Houston Texans. I'll let you hear from head coach David Culley before we jump into basketball, which will be. We'll talk a lot about that. And let me say this to you in terms of as you're watching the show, drop it in the chat and let me know what you think. And for those of you who are watching the replay, you can drop your comments in the chat too. I'm going to come back and answer your questions, but I want to make sure if you're watching the replay that you also engage, because I'll come back and check out what you have to say. So one of the things happening in the NBA as it relates to COVID, as you all know, we are still in the midst of COVID. This Delta variant, ain't no joke, right? It's really, the numbers are still high. The state where I live in a southern state. I live in a red state, if you want to call it, if you look at it that way. And, so it was one of the places where COVID and the vaccine have become very politicized, and our vaccination rates are not as high as in other places. And so our rates of COVID and the variant are still high, right? People are getting COVID at a high rate, and people who are unvaccinated are unfortunately not surviving COVID at a high rate. And so in the NBA, they don't have a mandate about vaccines, but I will tell you, yesterday at Media Day, Rafael Stone, the general manager of the Houston Rockets, said that the Rockets are 100%, the team is 100% vaccinated, right? And apparently the number around the league is thought to be about 90% of players who are vaccinated. But one of the big stories that's been out recently has revolved around Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets. I'd like to know your thoughts about it. Feel free to drop it in the chat. He doesn't want to disclose his status. He says it's private and citing privacy issues. So what that means for him in terms of playing home games in Brooklyn, because New York has a mandate, at this point, he will not be able to play in games at home. Unless he is vaccinated, and if he's not willing to say what his status is, then that could be a problem. So what are your thoughts about that in terms of how that's handled? And because the NBA does not have a mandate, there's nothing the NBA can do. But that is one story that people have have been talking about. Jackie says Kyrie will Kyrie. Yikes! Yeah, he will. He will. And I'm reminded that he. This is the same man who is incredibly talented, but that said that the world is flat. So, good morning, Sylvia, my sister. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm so glad that you guys are joining me and participating in the conversation. So, I'd like to know your thoughts about that. Um, because I just think when I hear people say I want to do my research, I don't really know how much more research would like. We've been in this COVID space. We're heading into almost 2 years, more than 18 months. And so, what does that mean? I try to be really respectful. No, I don't try. I am respectful of people having a different, having their own opinions and whether or not they want to get the vaccine. And so, this whole privacy thing, when you play a sport, when you play basketball, right? When you're going to be bumping up against people, breathing on them, yeah, I don't think anybody wants to know the rest of your medical history. They just want to know whether you are vaccinated because it could impact them, right? I don't really care about everybody else's, all of their vaccine, I mean, their medical history if it doesn't affect me. But if I am going to be in contact with you for my work or in the same place, I do want to know whether you have, just as it relates to COVID. That's it. So I think that's the privacy thing. I don't really get it. And when you say more research, what are you doing? Like, other than listening to, hey, good morning, Lawanda, my godmother joined us. Good morning, welcome to Chalk. Jackie said usually means I want to watch more YouTube. Does not mean I'm scrubbing into a science lab. That's a very good point. And that's my thing. So what kind of research, right, are you getting? And how much more are you getting? Are you listening to, as Jackie mentioned, scientists? Or are you watching more of these YouTube videos sometimes that take you down rabbit holes with people who are not, if that are not really scientifically based? I struggle there, right? And when I listen, I have friends, I have family members who have decided not to be vaccinated, and I always ask respectfully, with no judgment. I'm just curious, what is your hesitation? And so when I hear these things, I admit to you, I don't really understand it, right? I don't understand it. So, yeah, I don't. The mask thing is, I don't know if I think the challenge for him. I mean, he can play on the road right now, but he can't play at home because in the state of New York, there's a mandate. And so he won't be able to play on his home court without being vaccinated, which means that you have to prove that you are. So, yeah, it's just really interesting times. And I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, right? So I just continue to drop your thoughts in the chat about that. I'd love to know what you think about the vaccine as it relates to these professional sports and sports teams. The news out this morning from Pfizer is that they are close to having a vaccine for young people, for children ages 5 to 11. They're ready to submit that to try to get approval. One of the places that has been the numbers of COVID have been high, have been among children because, they can't be vaccinated under the age of 12. And so this will open it up and allow for, to maybe cut into those numbers of young people, being, getting COVID, because we've seen a lot of those cases. So that's what's happening in New York. If you're in Texas, you know the drill here. There's a whole lot happening. Not a whole lot of it is necessarily positive. But I want to let you hear from, Texans coach David Culley, right? He spoke yesterday, and the team had a couple of days off because they played on Thursday night. They lost to Carolina at home, and he talked a little bit about facing the Bills, who they go face, and really what he wants to see from his team. There's no update really on Tyrod Taylor. He said as far as he knows, he's on track, which initially they thought would be about 4 weeks. He said 2 to 4 weeks, but when you put him on IR, that's at least 4 weeks. So, we'll see how that goes. The other players are banged up. He was asked about Justin Reed. He said he thought Justin Reed was trending in the right direction. He didn't make any commitment about whether or not he would be ready for Sunday because they haven't practiced yet. So, and today, of course, is an off day. But here is Texans head coach David Culley.
That's a very good football team. That's a playoff caliber football team. They're very good in all phases, offensively, defensively, and special teams. They've been very consistent. It's a well-coached football team that's got a lot of good football players on it.
David, in general, when it comes to fourth down situations in opponent territory, what goes into the back and forth with the people, the numbers upstairs, and how you come to your ultimate decision, and what goes into that feeling to still kind of make a decision against numbers?
That's a good question because we do use the analytical information that we have. But I think when you're playing the game, a lot of times, and when we sit down and have those meetings, they tell me, okay, well, this is what everybody's doing in the league. This is what the numbers say. But sometimes when you're in a ball game, and depending on who you're playing, whether how good they are defensively or vice versa, what they have on the offensive side has a lot to do with whether you decide to be able to go for it on fourth down or not. And I think a lot of times it gets back to just how you feel.
How much in your gut in these last couple of situations have it been has there been a struggle there, or you feel like?
Well, I think there's been a little bit of struggle simply because of the kicking part of it. A couple of situations we had where I may have kicked it when I probably didn't kick it, or I didn't go for it when I should have went for it. And I think that it's just me filling it out and just kind of getting a good feel for how we're playing during that particular times.
So let me just say this. I've been covering this Texans team for a while, and I will tell you that David Culley, in his short tenure as head coach of this Houston Texans football team, gets far more questions about the underlying questions. What you're not hearing is, do you get to make your own decisions? That's what you don't hear, right? That's why Kim Davis deciphering what some of these questions are. And so I think it's fair if you talk about analytics, but there's so many questions about, does somebody tell you what to do or do you get to do it? That's really at the heart of a lot of these questions. And so while David Culley is not responding to him that way because he's being very professional, that's what it is. And I'm just going to leave that right there. So you can make of that what you will. You can make of that what you will. So I talked about the Houston Rockets, okay? And I told you that media day was yesterday. Training camp opens today. And I said that the John Wall Houston Rockets situation is our When the Crowd Stops Cheering segment for today. And when the crowd stops cheering isn't always a negative thing. And so the reason I put this particular topic in this segment is because I find it to be really interesting. So here's the story. Here's the update in case you're not familiar. So John Wall, of course, was traded to the Rockets last year in a deal with the Washington Wizards for Russell Westbrook. And the team obviously had a lot of injuries. They were young. The team finished toward the bottom, at the bottom of the league. And so they've been in a rebuild mode. They went out and they got some draft picks. They drafted Jaylen Green with the second overall pick. They've made a few moves in the offseason, but they're a pretty young team now. They went from being a really kind of old team a few years ago to being a really young team. And so so John Wall has and the Rockets have agreed that he will work out every day and really be more of a mentor for the young players until John Wall and the Rockets can find the best place for him to go for him. And so you say, well, what does that mean? So some sort of a trade. Where will John Wall go? What is his next move? Where will he end up? And it's kind of fluid. But what's different about this situation is that John Wall and the Rockets have had a conversation jointly and have decided that this is how they're going to move forward. It's best for the team and it's best for John Wall. And John Wall and Rafael Stone, the general manager, jointly came out yesterday at Media Day, and they talked about it. So I want to let you hear a little bit from Rafael Stone and John Wall.
But ever since I came here, everything's been professional. Just being with the organization and talking to Rafael and talking to Coach Silas. We just all came together to feel like it was the best decision for both parts of our team to decide to make that decision. But it wasn't easy. It was tough. But and my job here is to be like a mentor, be a leadership, try to teach these young guys like how the NBA goes, and be here and be a support system throughout the whole season.
One thing I want to add is I personally felt that John sacrificed a ton for our group last year. And so when we were trying to figure this out, I wanted to make sure that we treated him really fairly. And because he was playing, like the plan last year was he wasn't supposed to play back-to-backs. And then I'm looking up one day and yeah, we played last night, right? Like, why is John on the court? And so, but which I appreciated. Like that's not coming from a bad place. That's coming from a great place. But part of our conversations this summer was making sure that everybody ends up in as good a place as they possibly can without people having to make sacrifices that they can't make, And so, So anyway, but I did want to say that about what I felt like John did last year for us and how appreciative we are.
So throughout yesterday, Media Day, and as they both talked about it, and John said it was a difficult decision for him. He still feels like he's got some game left. And Rafael said that as well. So the question was asked, well, will John travel with the team? And Rafael said, absolutely. He's a part of the team. Like, he's a part of this. And John's position is, I'm going to continue to work out and play and be ready so that when the right opportunity arises, will be prepared for it. And they're just kind of going through the process. I don't want to say playing it by ear, but kind of playing it by ear in terms of how this goes. But I just thought that was, kudos to John Wall and to Rafael Stone for sitting down and saying, listen, this is where we are as a team, honestly, right? The young guys, they're guard heavy. They have Kevin Porter from last year, who's an emerging player in this league. They drafted Jaylen Green, who obviously you want to get him on the court right away, another guard. And so you have other guards on the team. So what do? So you want to bring those guys along and get them playing and start building that nucleus of your team. And it's difficult to do that if you're going to be starting John Wall. So they've made this decision jointly, and I think that it was nice to see. I asked Rafael Stone about that, and if this speaks to really the culture of this Rockets team and who they are. Maybe I didn't get that clip. No, I didn't. There was another clip that Rafael talked about, and it's not that he's trying to show people anything. He said it's just really about how you should treat people in the organization, not just players, your entire team. And that entire team makes up your entire staff. So you should treat people with respect. People should be a part of conversations, and there should be transparency and authenticity in those communications. I think that's, I don't want to say brilliant, but kind of brilliant. So I wanted to share that with you. And here's Rafael. I guess it's Rafael Stone answering that question. Let's see.
I think John's emblematic of the relationship that I think you should be trying to achieve, at least with all your players. But it's different. Like, John's a grown-up. Like, he's got kids and he's a great dad. Like a random anecdote. I had friends at Summer League, and John and I were hanging out during the game, and he had his babies around and was watching them. And my friend came up to me afterwards and he said, I don't know anything about that dude, but I know he's a good guy because I watch him interact with his kids, and only good people interact with their kids like that. And so John, so anyway, the point is that you treat people where they are. And John came to me as an adult. And so we've had a great working relationship that hopefully is developing into a friendship that will last, for a long time. And that's the goal, is to have these types of relationships with all of our players. These, I think that there's a little bit of a myth that relationships between players and organizations are supposed to when Bill Russell was playing. And there's all these anecdotes about how Bill Russell would read the newspaper while his teammates practiced because no one was ever told Bill Russell what to do. It was a partnership, and that's how all the best relationships are. They're partnerships. And so for sure, I feel like our relationship is a partnership, and that's what we need with all our guys. Now with the younger guys, we have a lot more influence over them, and they need to learn a lot of things. And so it's a different partnership, but it's always still a partnership. And it is important organizationally that we be a place that treats all of our employees like partners, not just our players, but all of them. And that we be a place that people want to be. And you can't just want to be someplace when everything is perfect. You have to want to be someplace no matter what. That's what makes a good place or a good organization. And that, we aspire to be that every day.
So that is I was able to find that sound. That's Rafael Stone. So I just think that speaks volumes about who he is as a general manager and a leader. And like he said, John is a grown-up. They were able to sit down and have a conversation. It wasn't just what's good for me. It is what's good for the team. How do we make it good for you? And to get some buy-in on both sides. There's of course it's difficult, right? They're not trying to pretend that this was an easy decision to come to, but it's one that was necessary and they both think is best for each party. And so I wanted to share that. And, throughout the week, I'll share a lot more with you about actually the play of this team and what you can expect. Here's Coach Silas really talking about how he is excited about this year's team and how he learned a lot last year in his first year as a head coach.
Last year was challenging. It was. It started off one way, and then we had a bunch of changes and COVID and injuries and everything. I learned a lot last year, so there's not a feeling that last year is lost at all, because I learned a lot about a bunch of our guys as far as them sticking with it and playing hard at the end and who we can depend on. And then the older guys, as far as even though they were injured, staying with the group and being happy to be Rockets. And then we add our new guys who are kind of fitting right into what we finished with last year. So I'm super excited about the future of this group this season. And there's gonna be challenges just like there were last year.
There will be challenges there were last year. And my sister Ellen says, I like that statement, he's a grown-up, right? Like, what concept? He's a grown-up. And so bringing that to, it's nasty out. So listen, that's thunder that you hear if you're in some other part of the country. If you happen to be in Houston, then I'm going to tell you to be really safe on the roads because the weather's getting bad, and I'm actually about to get in it shortly and go to camp. But I wanted to share that with you. And before we go, I definitely want to also let you hear from the rookie Jaylen Green, the exciting player. Picked number 2 overall, spent a year in the G League. So even though he's a rookie, he feels like he's a little bit beyond just being a rookie because of the experience he had in the G League. He's got personality. If you remember him on the night of the draft, he's going to be one of the people making a fashion statement, which is kind of a big thing in professional sports leagues, at least, especially in the NBA, in some cases in the NFL. But here is Jaylen really just talking about, because he said he learned what he needs to work on. I asked him, how's this journey been from like pre-draft to draft and the summer and all that's gone on to get to this place? And he said it's actually kind of calmed down now. Pre-draft was busier, but one of the things he's had a chance to do is learn what he needs to work on. And I asked him, what are those things that you've learned about yourself as you get ready to head into camp?
I just learned because from in the whole bubble situation, we were playing in half court and we wasn't really playing fast and stuff like that. So I had to get back on like attacking downhill more, making better reads coming down, pick and roll, next passes, my handle. When I came from the bubble, my handle was bad and my shot selection. So I just knew 2 things I needed to work on coming out the bubble. And on top of that, after training camp and stuff like that, I knew what else I needed to work on.
So that was Jaylen Green. He talks about his handle, guys. You know what that is, how he handles the ball pretty, self-explanatory. But one of the things, like Rafael Stone said, is this team's going to be energetic and they should be fun to watch. So in terms of expectations, the goal is always to win. Like, they're trying to win, but no one's talking about this being a championship team in 2021 and 2022. They're talking about growing as an organization, growing as a team, building the chemistry, because teams that do well have that kind of chemistry, and building something for the future. But along the way, they're absolutely trying to win. And I'll let you hear more about this later in the day and throughout the week. Every player talked about Stephen Silas as a coach, not just him and what he's able to do and his ability as a coach, but what he's meant to them even off the court, how he has, to a man, talked to them about, not feeling isolated, what are you eating, how are you living, really just being that mentor and a friend as well as a coach, really giving some of them some things that they just haven't had. So Stephen Silas, while he said he learned a lot in his first year, he's absolutely the right coach for this team. I hate that when we say, oh, he's the right coach for this team right now. He's just the right coach. Last year, he was the right coach. One of the players said, in the interviews, that to give you a sense of how good of a coach he is, just look at how he was able to get us to continue to play late in the year. And I think you guys have heard me talk about that. When you saw how hard this team went, even when they were clearly out of the running for a playoff, right? We heard from Christian Wood. I'll let you hear from him later in the day. He is obviously going to be a big part of this team. And so they're just excited about what the future is and what this team can look like. So I think that is always, it's just always good to see. So I'm excited about it. I had somebody say, are you looking forward to covering the Rockets? And I said, absolutely. I'm looking forward to going to the stadium to some games this year. I didn't do that at all. I covered everything on Zoom. And I am just, excited to see what this young nucleus can be. And so that's my thought. All right, so we are out of time for today's show. As always, thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. If you didn't watch the show live and if you're watching the replay, still do drop your comments and let me hear from you as well. I'd love to know your thoughts. If there's something you want me to cover on Chalk Talk, you want me to, an interview you'd like for me to get, let me know. It's our show. You're a part of this tribe, and I appreciate you. Remember, Kimmy Treats is the title sponsor of Chalk Talk. It's the great place to get the organic hand-whipped body butter. Now that the weather's a little cooler, we started back shipping the body butter. We took a break on shipping it throughout the summer because it would melt because it's so hot and it doesn't have any preservatives in it. And also the very tasty vegan popcorn. So go to KimmyTreats.com. Make sure you support Kimmy Treats because not only is it my company, but it's the sponsor of Chalk Talk. And coming up, next week, there's a good chance we're going to have our buddy David Steele from the Sporting News joining us. We talked to him about it. Michael Haywood, former college coach. We're going to talk about some of the things happening around the college scene and probably a surprise. So that all is happening. We'll know what's happening. We'll talk more Astros next week because their playoff future, if you will, track will be kind of laid out. We'll know all of that on Sunday. But in the meantime, remember, if you haven't gotten the vaccine, get the vaccine. Make sure that you're practicing social distancing. Wear your mask when you're indoors in crowded places. And remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you next Tuesday on Chalk Talk.